Welcome to the show, Rosa. It's so good to have you.
Hello, Phoebe and Kim. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
You're very welcome. And I know that you've been involved with codebar for a long time, so I'd love to hear you tell Kim all about it.
Thank you, Phoebe. So I know, Rosa, you've been involved with codebar since the start, right? Like codebar started October 2013. You've been involved since 2013. I want to take you all the way back to that time. How did you hear about it?
So I first heard about it because at that point I'd finished uni for like a year and a bit, and I was working in this really small company in Brighton. It was kind of like a tech company, but I was like a junior project manager, and I'd worked there for a bit, but I enjoyed it in a way, but I kind of felt like I'd seen people do more of the actual technical work, and I thought, oh, that looks quite fun. So I wanted to learn a bit more about coding, and I'd been learning a bit. I made friends with this guy who worked in the opposite office to me, who was a games developer, and he bought me, this is going to make me sound old, but like WH Smith used to do those like make a website magazines.
Yeah.
He bought one of those, and I used to like copy it into my laptop on my lunch break. And so I was in the very early process of learning web development. I had done a bit of coding before at uni, but I was kind of like looking for things that were happening. And in the process of this, I joined Twitter, and I followed lots of tech people, and I saw that there was like I think it was Ladies Who Code conference happening in London. But at the time I was like stone cold broke. Like I could barely afford to like eat. I was living off like soup pretty much. I was just finished uni and I wanted to go, but it was really expensive. So I was like, I probably can't. But then this lady, she was a recruiter, and she posted that she had some free tickets for it. So I messaged her and she very kindly gave me a ticket. So I went along, and they had a lightning talk section. And Despo, who originally started Codebar, did a lightning talk about Codebar. And it was going to be, I don't know if it was the first or like one of the first workshops happening in a couple of weeks. So I basically went because I saw that. So I'm very grateful for the lady who gave me the ticket, and also that I saw that lightning talk that day.
And I know you've been on such a long journey since then, which I'm really excited to dive deeper. But I also know you are the reason why Codebar has chapters, because you started attending London and then you were like, well, this is really good, but can I bring it to Brighton? So tell me what happened next, like after you said like let's bring it to Brighton, because it completely changed Codebar. Now we're in like 45 locations around the world, but it was because of you. Like how does that feel?
Oh, now Codebar is like world domination, which I'm just living for. Like, I'm loving that you've taken it global. Yeah, it's just amazing, isn't it? Like, it's helped so many people. But in terms of starting Brighton, so in between, so I started going to the Codebar workshops in London, and then a few months later, this all happened like quite quickly in the space of like 9 months, I'd say. I met someone called Ali who was doing a workshop for Codebar, and then he kind of advertised that he was looking for an apprentice because he was starting like a software consultancy. And then he hired me, which was just like a life-changing thing for me. But it was amazing because obviously I met Ali through Codebar. So Codebar really is like the reason that I managed to get a job as a developer, which is one reason why it's very close to my heart. So yeah, but I guess I started working for Ali, and then I think I'd been a developer for like, I want to say like 4 months or something, not very long. And the idea of like doing Codebar Brighton was kind of being discussed mostly, I was saying how broke I was. Partly it was
Yeah.
because getting the train to London was just not that expensive, but it kind of was also. So I kind of thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could just not get the train to London and start it down in Brighton? And also there was someone called Tom Ashworth who used to come to Codebar London as a mentor, and we used to get the train back together to Brighton because he was a Brightonian at the time. So yeah, he also kind of encouraged me that we could start the chapter together, and we also had a lot of support from Despo and also from Ali. So yeah, but it was quite terrifying because I'd never run an event before. But Ali basically just said to me, like, if you run an event, you just have to turn up every week, even if it's like rubbish, even if no one turns up, because you can at least spend that time thinking about how you can improve it for the next time. So yeah, so we decided to start it, and at that point I was going to like this meetup called Async JS, and it was just like I loved going to it. Everyone was really friendly, even though I was actually working as a Ruby developer, and my JavaScript skills were, not the best, but I still love going along and learning. And the people there were just lovely. So we kind of did like an announcement at Async JS and asked if anyone was interested in mentoring at codebar. And honestly, the amount of people that signed up was just like amazing. Like they were so up for it. So I think having that sort of like community push from the start was just so good. And then also the venue that Async JS happened was a place called 68 Middle Street, and someone called Jeremy Keith like ran Clear Left and also the event space, so he let us like have codebar there for like the first few to kind of get us on our feet. Yeah, so it was quite nice that we had already had that like bit of community behind us when we started. So yeah, that was kind of how it began.
I think what you mentioned about consistency is really key, because whenever we start new chapters now, one of the things I say to any of the new organisers is it doesn't matter how often you run them. You can do them weekly, you can do them fortnightly, you can do it once a month, but be consistent with it. So, do it on the last Tuesday of every month, because then people will know it's happening, they'll put it in that diary. So, yeah. And I think it's so nice that so many other people in Brighton were like so supportive of you starting this chapter, and like really helped, just really ready to support and help you. I can imagine that felt really really reassuring when starting the chapter.
Yeah, it was so nice, and I loved the Brighton community. Yeah, it was just, I think Brighton's quite a like, it's just a very like creative and like friendly place anyway. So I think it was, and I think it being quite, I mean, I know it's a city, but I feel like you can walk everywhere. It's kind of a small city, so I think that kind of helped with like a lot of the companies are all very kind of close to each other in proximity and stuff. And yeah, it's just like nice to build a community. But we actually found the harder part was finding students at first, and I don't know if many of the other, I think it's probably other chapters may have had that as well. I'd be interested to know. Yeah, so that was actually one of the probably bigger challenges, was actually trying to get more students. So,
And why do you think that was a big challenge? I mean, that's a difficult question, you might know the answer, but if other chapters are kind of listening and having that problem, why do you think the problem exists, and what would you recommend they do?
yes, I think partly it's just getting the word out, because it does take time for like the event to grow traction. And I suppose now things like social media and stuff are a bit bigger, but like this was quite a while ago, so it wasn't quite the same. And we kind of just did loads of approaches. Like we asked people who came as mentors to ask people at their works if they wanted to come as students. We emailed like the local universities, we emailed like lots of local companies, we even like printed out flyers and put them around the shops and the cafes and bars and things. And the thing that helped, I'd say, the most was speaking at other people's events, because they already had the following, which is what we wanted in order to try and get more people to come. So there's a really great event in Brighton called She Says Brighton, and it's like women in tech talks. I don't know how I know they're still running. I think every couple of months they're having an event, and they're very well attended. Like lots of people are there, and Rifa, who runs the event, she was always like really supportive, and we got to know each other, and she let me do some lightning talks there, and that made such a big difference, because it was quite a good underrepresented audience. Yeah, people came along. So yeah, spreading the word like that, and also being part of things like Brighton Digital Festival, like umbrella events that have like a lot more advertising already, that really helped. And then I think it's like, I guess people are mostly put off by the fear, because it can be scary to, one, go to a new place, meet new people, and two, it's like if it's a thing you haven't done before, then you might not think it's for you, or it's quite intimidating. So I think like just getting out there and talking to people, and then just trying to make it the most like friendly atmosphere.
That's so interesting. And we kind of taking you to the middle of your story. So if we could take you back to the start of your story, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So when I grew up, when I was little, I'd say like 7 years old, I really wanted to be an author. I was like obsessed with writing stories. I loved like, I mean, I don't think I had like the most highbrow literature. Like, I loved Jacqueline Wilson and like the Sweet Valley High books and stuff like that. But I loved writing, and my mum used to be a childminder, so I would write plays out, and all the childminded kids and me and my sister would be acting out in the plays and things. So yeah, that was the original dream that unfortunately crumbled.
I'm going to disagree with that, because I think when you said that you were acting out plays and stuff as a young child, I think that does align with, some of the work you do now, which is an event organizer. You do give talks, and so I do think that not the writing part, but I do think it aligns. I bet that did give you the confidence to, be in front of people and talk.
Yeah, I used to love like doing drama, and I love music and like quite like creative things. So yeah, I feel like it has actually, like for example, like one of my A levels I did was drama, and people were like, oh, that's not a real subject. But honestly, that's helped me probably so much in my life in terms of like communication and going through the fear of, I still get nervous obviously, but getting out in front of people. And
I did GCSE drama and then A-level drama as well. And I've sometimes been asked that at codebar, like, oh, like, how come you're so confident on stage? And I say to them, like, it's almost like a character, like that's codebar Kim on stage, and then there's also like just day-to-day Kim, and they are the same people, but it kind of helps me feel less scared that like it's easier to pretend to be someone else on stage in front of people than be yourself. So in my head, it's like, okay, it's codebar Kim going on stage, or like, like I'm giving the talk at FF Conf, like that will be codebar Kim, even though they are the same people, but it helps me feel less scared that like I'm pretending to be someone. I'm pretending to be this confident person, even though inside I'm absolutely terrified.
I love that though.
I'm actually going to disagree with both of you, and I think you're still young. You could totally write a book and be an author. Just because you haven't done it now doesn't mean that you won't do it eventually.
Yeah, this is true. And yeah, I have done I tried to do some like blogs and things in the past, but I've not kept up with it very well. But that you're right. The world is my oyster.
Exactly, the world is definitely your oyster. So you wanted to be an author. At what point did your interest in tech start?
Yeah, so I was trying to think like when I first encountered anything code related, and I think there was a little bit in maybe middle school, because so I grew up in Milton Keynes, and it meant that the schools that I went to, they were just like the regular school, but because they'd just been built, because Milton Keynes was literally just being built, they had quite good facilities, and they had some sort of partnership with Apple. And do you remember those really cute like iMac computers in all the different colors, like chunky ones?
Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah, they had some sort of like deal with them. So we had loads of those in the school, which is obviously like pretty cool. So, and I think because those computers were quite like cute looking, I was like, oh, these are fun. So I was like, eventually graduated to like the leader of in like year 7 or something.
I think the word is editor. Editor, you edited it.
Yeah, and that used something called Adobe Go Live, I think. And I don't recall doing any coding, but at least it was kind of like I remember doing, the only article I can remember is I wrote one about guinea pigs. And yeah, so that's like my first little dip into it. But then when I went to high school, didn't learn any coding. It wasn't really on the curriculum, and I think a lot of people of like similar age had the same thing. So yes, I didn't do any coding, but the reason that I kind of got into it was I was really into music, and I played classical guitar from a young age, and I was in an all-girl rock band in high school, which sadly we didn't really make it out of MK. We just did like a few local shows.
Just
But
before you change, just carry on with your story. What's the name of your rock band? I've got to ask.
it was called Diesel Shandy. And we literally did like barely any shows. The good thing about it was that, so I said that I grew up in Milton Keynes, so we had like new facilities, schools. The school had a recording studio, and
This
it meant,
sounds like the nicest school ever. My school definitely didn't have all of these things, but it's worked out very well for you.
I know it sounds very posh, but it wasn't. Well, it was just the school that was there. Yeah, so the recording studio meant that we did like band practice in there all the time, and I sort of got interested in like music technology, because you could like record playing guitar or record band practice, and I just absolutely loved using the studio. So I did music tech for A level. I thought I wanted to do music tech for my job, so I was like applying for uni, and I was filling out UCAS, and like you have to put 5 options down. So I put some down, and then the last one I was just like, I found this random course at Sussex, and I was like, it was like called Music Informatics, which is like music and computer science. And I was like, literally didn't know what that meant, but I just pasted it in anyway because I needed to fill up my list. So submitted it, and then I got invited to go to the open day, and my dad was like, oh, do you want to go? And I was just like, probably not going to go there because I don't know what it is, but it was a day off school, so I thought I'll be up for that. And I went to it, and that was the first time I'd seen someone write code. Oh, apart from actually, there was like, I've missed out an important bit, which is the MySpace era with adding like semicolon to my MySpace profile. That was the only
Yeah.
coding I've done.
Yeah.
I was telling someone that knows about coding about that about MySpace recently, and they were like, "But you know that was like early coding," and I was like, "Absolutely not. I did not know that." But learn something new every day.
I
Yeah,
felt like such a hacker anytime I was like able to change something.
yeah. So I guess I knew coding existed, and I'd seen it a little bit on the MySpace editor, but like that was like the extent. But I went to the uni open day, and the tutor, so I had this really cool tutor who was called Nick, and he was typing out this code, and it was like generating music, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And yeah, so basically you kind of learn coding, but then you could kind of use it in conjunction with music. And I was like, oh, instead of just like using software, maybe I could learn how to make software. And yeah, so I was just like, okay, I'll just do that. So I signed up completely naive to how you actually make software or anything like that. And that's how I first got into it. I went to uni, and it was a bit of a shock because they were quite separate. So music on one side, a lot of it was fairly classical, so like performance and composition analysis. And then the other side was more like introduction to Java, algorithms, that kind of thing. And it was only in the later years that they kind of converged into, you kind of got to use like make generative music with code and digital signal processing and things like that. So in the first year, I actually found it really hard because I was in these like Java classes with all these computer science people that had been, like, I hadn't done maths A level, I did music tech, drama and media, so very on the creative side. Maths, I was never that great. I would say I was like average at it, and so it was a bit of a shock. And it's just a different way of thinking as well. And something that I've learned over time is that you have to be able to really break down the problem into small pieces to solve it. But at first I would just be like just trying to take in all the information and just be really overwhelmed. And I was one of the very few girls in the lectures, and I found that very scary because I just kind of felt like, oh my God, I'm so stupid compared to all these people, like I shouldn't be here. I kind of very much felt very intimidated. But thinking back, partly it was maybe like my perception of them and their perception of me were both a problem. Like they probably didn't think those things about me, but in my head I just felt very scared. So I found it very difficult at first, and I think because the outcome was a bit less creative when you're just writing like a Java program and printing stuff out, yeah, I found it very difficult. So I didn't really take to coding very easily at first, to be honest. It's taken a lot of like determination, but I think a lot of it is like battling with the ego, because before that I'd always just like, I don't know, with this it was kind of like, when you really struggle and you just want to give up. But something that I've learned with coding is that you will fail all the time, and you have to let that ego go, because the only way you're going to learn is if you just keep trying, keep breaking down the problem, not getting like personally upset with yourself if you can't do it. It's just part of the learning process. And so I think once I'd actually understood that helped. And also because I failed my second year of uni because I just found it difficult, but partly it was because I was getting scared to go to some of the classes because I just felt like I was just behind everyone. But in my final year I was like, right, I'm just going to like believe in myself. I'm just going to go to everything. I'm just going to work like really hard. And I did. And I remember at the time with another challenge as well, because I worked like various part-time jobs at the same time. And it would just literally be like, oh, work all day, come back, then try and cram all of the learning in. So it was a very tiring time, but I managed to turn it around and did fairly well and made some cool music code and stuff. So yeah, that was kind of how I got into it in a sense. But I never thought that I could get a job as a developer when I finished uni, because I guess maybe I kind of thought I didn't know how I would get like a music generating job, and the Java stuff seems quite, I don't know if I would be able to do that as a job. So I think it was once that I actually found out a bit more about web development and people encouraged me more, because I felt like at uni no one really encouraged me as much, whereas in real life people were. And I think maybe the supportive culture of the community is a bit different to uni, because you're not really meant to collude with each other, and yeah, just a different atmosphere.
I think that is really important. I think it really demonstrates how much of an impact people around you can have on you, because, you know, like you said, you didn't really want to continue taking part in it. So when you finished university, you said there was a bit of a gap before, you know, you found codebar and then you started coding again. When you finished, did you have a plan? Like, were you going to take a break? Were you like, coding definitely isn't for me? Yeah, what was your plan when you then finished uni?
Yeah, so my plan, I guess I thought I would work in tech, but I'd be like not a developer like I'd probably do. Like, in my first job was like a project manager, because I suppose I kind of liked the, you know, the communication side. I felt like I enjoyed talking to people and like organizing things. And so but it's still kind of tech related, so I thought that would be quite good. And I started doing that just after I finished uni, and it was a really nice company as well, but it was a lot of spreadsheets, and I was just like not the biggest spreadsheet fan. But yeah, I think I was like, I don't want to just be managing other people to do all the fun development side. I want to actually be able to do it, even though I didn't know if I would be able to or not. But yeah, just over time slowly learn.
So the moment you started attending codebar, you briefly touched on it earlier that, you know, you got offered a job. Could you go into a bit more depth about what happened from, you know, the moment you started attending codebar to the moment you got your first job? Because we have a lot of people, you know, that are attending codebar that are ready to take on their first job, and often people don't know when they're ready or, you know, what to do next. So could you go into a bit more depth about that time period? Because you said it was quite quick, actually.
Yeah, I will start by saying that I think it was a lot easier back then. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there was no, I think Makers Academy was just starting at that point. There was a lot less new developers in the industry that I could tell of. It was maybe more like people from uni. And, you know, there's something that has found difficult to see is, you know, obviously it is a lot harder for people to break into tech now. You know, I wish it wasn't, and I'm very lucky that I just started earlier, so there were, I think, more opportunities around. So yeah, but I started going to codebar, and I was practicing on my lunch breaks when I worked at the old company. Me and my friend who I mentioned got me that magazine. We used to like go to the pub together, and like he'd help me with my coding, and I would practice in the evening. Just, I think at first I was just making like very basic websites with like HTML and CSS. Mostly I'd just be like trying to copy them from the magazine and change them and things like that. So I'm trying to think what online resources I used. I think I just used like W3 schools and like really like old earlier stuff. And I also used the codebar tutorials. So yeah, started going through the codebar tutorials. Then I went to Ali's workshop, and we met, and he posted something about the apprenticeship. I think he might have, I don't know if he emailed me about applying or if I saw it, can't remember, but anyway, applied for it. And then I think I had to do a coding test and also write something. And I think the thing could be anything, like it was just an example of your writing, because it was a remote job. So I think he wanted to see that, you know, you could communicate with written word. And I submitted my code, and I will not lie, I don't think it all worked. I think it like partly worked, and I was just like, I've tried this and this, but I did write I'll say an impassioned letter about why I wanted to be a software developer. And I think I spoke a bit about, you know, my struggles at uni and how how I'd been like teaching myself and how I just really wanted to learn. And I think he said that he basically hired me because of like, he was kind of like, you know, I feel like I can teach you to code, but I think it's kind of that like drive and knowing that you really want to do it and thing that I'm looking for. So yeah, so it was, I think, more because of that. But I don't, like, nowadays I know it's so much harder to get a job, so I don't know if that would fly as much. But I think having that personal sort of, I think he could see that I'd been actively trying to build things, and that I really wanted to make the change, and that I'd been going to codebar and things like that. So
Was then GDS your second job? So then
yeah,
I know with GDS, you spent a long time at GDS, you know, was it 8 years you were at GDS, 7 or 8 years?
yeah, 8 years.
Can you tell me, because for a lot of people, that's a long time to, spend a job in tech, particularly on the same product. And I'm actually really intrigued to know, what was it that made you stay there that long?
Yeah, it is a long time. And so I started because when I first worked there, I knew a couple of people that worked there and they always said very positive things about it. It was a nice culture and I liked that it was very like I had a lot of users. And yeah, so first 2 years I was on like Ruby teams and I worked on a few different things doing Ruby. Then I moved on to a different program because I wanted to learn Java. I don't know what made me want to go back there after my time at uni, but maybe I just wanted to like, conquer it. And I thought it would be good to work in another language because I'd worked in Ruby for like my whole, I guess, 4 years at the time. So yeah, I did Java for like a year, but then the program I was on, they were like, oh, we're going to start a Ruby team in the program, which they put me on. But that was actually really good because I got to kind of teach people who were Java developers Ruby, and a lot of them really liked it. So that was good. Then I moved back to the original program, which was gov.uk, and that was around the time of the pandemic starting. And then I was on the coronavirus team, and that's where I first started just tech leading. And it was it was, I know the pandemic was an awful time, but in terms of like the experience of working on the team, it was actually a great team. Like we learned so much. It was very high pressure because we had to build these services within like a matter of days, and usually a service has like a long time like lead up of lots of research. And but I think and we were getting like millions and millions of people because obviously we were like the canonical source of information. And also it was constant change because information was changing, rules were changing, everything was changing. So yeah, it was just a really like an opportunity to like grow, and you have to learn very quickly. And also on that team, it was, I don't know, we just had a good culture, and I was very lucky that I was with like a more senior developer who is now a lead developer on gov.uk called Lena, and she was like a real like mentor to me. And we started off by like tech leading the team together, and she kind of showed me the ropes and of like starting leadership. And given it was such a like for like mental well-being wise, it was difficult. People's family were getting really ill with COVID, and we all know that it was a difficult time already, let alone if you're working on it every day. So I did 2 years on that, which took me up to like 7 years or something at this point. But I was also doing a master's apprenticeship. I don't know why I decided to do this at the same time as COVID, because it was just like the busiest time. I guess I thought, well, I'm not going out anyway, so I may as well do it. However, when we were allowed back out again, then it was hard to be like, I just want to go to the pub, it's so sunny outside, but I need to do my work. But that lasted 2 and a bit years because it was an apprenticeship as well. So that kind of just, all of that just added up to 8 years somehow. So although it was like the same company, I worked on a lot of different things and I learned so much there. And like the thing that mostly kept me there was the people. The dev community were just so nice, and like just learned so much from them. So
you touched on it a tiny bit, but you said you were able to grow loads during the COVID time. But did you feel the pressure internally as a team to make sure that it was like quick turnaround? Because having to turn around something so quickly in a matter of days with millions of users, I can't even comprehend how that must have felt internally to like just do it. Did you feel the pressure?
Yeah, there was definitely some pressure, luckily, because like we had a very like, I don't know, our team was just, we worked well together. We were just like quite, I don't know, we kind of thrived on the chaos at times. And but like how you have a hackathon, it's like quite intense, but it's kind of like that. But that's not sustainable, obviously. So yeah, it's a difficult balance between well-being and getting stuff done. Yeah, it was good, but I would say definitely not something that's a sustainable way to work. But I guess you do sometimes learn a lot in those
Yeah. Yeah,
stressful
totally. And what are you doing today? Because I know you changed job recently. So what are you doing nowadays?
Yeah, so now I'm working at a company called Boxed, and they do like boiler installations, green energy product installations. So I'm doing like back-end development for their website. So it's good, but I'm doing more. I would say I got after, because I said I was doing like the masters and working on COVID, and I also like planned a big wedding and like all like positive things, but I was getting quite burnt out, and I wanted like just a nice smaller company with like a really nice culture. I'm doing just like coding. I'm like a senior developer. I'm not really doing like line management and stuff anymore. I would like to do that again, but I think to do that kind of thing, you need to have your cup more full. And I felt that I needed to take some time to just get back to myself again. And yeah, and it's been great because I feel like my coding skills were regressing a bit as well. So now I feel like they're, you know, just day to day, I'm not balancing as many things. And I feel like, yeah, just my focus is more just like on improving my tech skills. And it's just, yeah, a really nice culture there. And it's just a bit of a smaller scale, which is just, it's just nice environment. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, I'm good you were, I'm glad you were able to see that happening and make that change. So before we wrap up and let you go, how can people connect with you online?
You can find me. So my name is Rosa Fox, and you can find me on like any social media or LinkedIn. Yeah.
And just before you go, one last question. What advice would you give someone that's just starting out?
So I would say, first of all, you need to pulling your hair out, wondering why it's not working. But yeah, this is normal. Like I've been a developer for 11 years now, and I still get stuck all the time and have to figure things out and work things out. And most developers that I speak to feel the same thing. It does get easier. There is hope. I think the first 2 years are like probably the hardest because there's so many new concepts. There's all these, I just used to call them like words, all these words that I would not know what they meant, and I'd have to find out what each word would mean in the task and then eventually do the task. Whereas now I kind of know what the words mean, but I just need to do the task. So yeah, I'd say just you have to believe in yourself and don't give up. And if you can find a good community, that will really help you with not giving up, whether it's something online, whether it's a friend that you code with at the pub, or whether it's codebar or any other meetup group. I think like for me that's the thing that helped a lot. And then I'd also say something that can help as well is kind of like building like a bit of, I know it is time consuming, but just building a bit of a profile for yourself. Maybe if it's like making your own website or actively putting things on GitHub or a blog, because you know, even like no one's expecting the code to be amazing or anything like that, but I think just showing that you're actively interested in learning to code, I think is a good thing to do.
Interesting. And how you feel about words is exactly how I feel sometimes in codebar. I have to say to people, remember, I'm not technical, just explain it to me like I'm a child.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rosa, for this conversation. It was so nice to go back and, reminisce on those really early codebar days. And also it's kind of got me just thinking so much about, how much it's changed over the 10 years. And it was so nice as well, hearing about your journey. So thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure having you. Have a lovely rest of your day.
You too. Have a lovely day.